167.
It's a number that, honestly, when you first see it on a stat sheet, it looks like a typo.
It really does.
It doesn't quite compute with, the reality of modern sports.
No, not at all. I mean, we are sitting here looking at the all-time records for tennis singles titles. I'm just scanning down the list of all the legends.
Right.
You look at Roger Federer, the Swiss maestro, he finished with 103. Jimmy Connors, who held the men's record forever, 109.
Which was considered this untouchable number for so long.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then sitting at the very, very top of the mountain, looking down at literally everyone else in the history of the Open era, is Martina Navratilova with 167 singles titles.
It's just in another stratosphere. To put that in a context for you that really lands, think about Serena Williams.
Okay.
For the last 2 decades, she was the definition of dominance, right? I mean, she felt inevitable.
Completely.
Serena finished her career with 73 singles titles.
So if you take Serena Williams' entire incredible dominant singles career, clone it, and then stack it right on top of itself, you still don't catch Martina.
Not even close. You'd still be about 20 titles short. That is the scale of dominance we're talking about today.
And that's just the singles column.
Precisely. We haven't even opened the door on the doubles records, the mixed doubles, or the just the sheer unbelievable longevity of her career.
Or the fact that she achieved all of these numbers while navigating a geopolitical minefield that it would have absolutely broken most people.
Oh, without a doubt.
So today, we aren't just talking about a tennis player. We are unpacking a study in absolute, unyielding iron will.
This is a deep dive into the architecture of dominance. We've pulled the extensive biographical records, the ITF and WTA year-by-year data, and a massive stack of documented interviews spanning 4 decades.
And the mission here is to really look at how a stateless teenager, a defector, transformed into perhaps the most dominant athlete of the 20th century.
And how she revolutionized the way athletes eat, train, and play, and how she became this lightning rod for controversy that, frankly, burns just as hot today as it did back in 1981.
The mission is simple but heavy. We want to understand the cost of that dominance. Because when you look at the source material, nothing came free.
Nothing.
Not the titles, not the citizenship, and certainly not the freedom to just be herself.
It's a story of constant adaptation. It's about standing your ground, whether that's at the net at Wimbledon facing a passing shot or, in the middle of a political firestorm on national television.
So let's rewind the tape. We need to go back behind the Iron Curtain. Before the world knew Navratilova, the icon, who was she?
She was born Martina Navratilova in Prague, Czechoslovakia in 1956. And here is where the story starts, because the tennis DNA was there from the very beginning.
But not in the way you might expect.
No, not from her parents initially. It actually came from her grandmother, Agnes Szymanska.
I saw that in the notes. Her grandmother wasn't just like a casual club player, right?
No, she was the real deal. Agnes was the number 2 ranked player in all of Czechoslovakia before the Second World War.
Wow.
She was the one who put a racket in Martina's hand when she was practically a toddler. The stories say she was hitting balls off a concrete wall at age 4.
So the raw talent was there from day one.
It was. But the family dynamic was complicated. Her parents divorced when she was very young, just 3 years old. Her mother, Jana, was a gymnast and a tennis player herself, and she eventually remarried a man named Miroslav Navratil.
And there's the name, hence the name change.
Exactly. Miroslav became her first real coach. And by all accounts, he was a strict disciplinarian, but he saw the potential immediately. He was the one who really started to shape her game.
So she took his last name.
Right. Martina took his last name and added the feminine suffix ova, which is standard in the Czech language grammar, to become Navratilova.
Now, we need to paint the picture of 1960s and 70s Czechoslovakia, because for a listener who grew up in the U.S. or Western Europe, playing tennis means, country clubs, white outfits, maybe some strawberries and cream.
That is not what this was.
Not at all.
Not even close. This is the height of the Cold War. The political atmosphere is incredibly oppressive. You have to remember, the 1968 Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia, the Prague Spring, that happens when Martina is 12 years old.
So she's seeing this firsthand.
She is watching Soviet tanks roll through the streets of Prague. The state controls everything, where you travel, what you earn, what you're allowed to say. And the Tennis Federation wasn't just a sports body. It was an arm of the state.
And Martina, even as a kid, she wasn't exactly the keep your head down and comply type, was she?
Not in the slightest. She was a rebel from the start. There's this great detail in her biography about school. Russian was a mandatory subject. It was the language of the occupier, the language of the regime.
And she just refused.
Famously refused to speak it. She would just stay silent in class. It was a small act of defiance, but it really, it foreshadowed everything that was to come.
It showed that spirit was there from the beginning.
It was. She realized early on that her ceiling wasn't going to be determined by her talent or her work ethic, but by the Communist Party. They decided who got to be a star.
Which brings us to the tipping point. 1975. She is 18 years old. She's a rising star. She's traveling to the U.S. Open in New York. But this trip is different. She knows something the others don't.
This is the moment of no return. The Czechoslovak Tennis Federation was tightening the leash. They were accusing her of being too Americanized.
What does that even mean?
It meant she was becoming too independent. They didn't like her friendships with Western players. They didn't like her outspoken nature. They were threatening to cut her travel visa.
So she knew her time was running out.
She realized that if she went back to Prague after the U.S. Open, she might never be allowed out again. Her career would effectively be over before it even started.
Talk about pressure. I remember being 18. My biggest stress was, what I was going to wear to a party or finishing a college application.
Right.
She's contemplating defecting from a totalitarian regime while trying to win a Grand Slam.
It's almost cinematic. It's unbelievable. She's in New York. She plays the semifinal against Chris Evert, and we will get to that rivalry in a bit, believe me. And she loses.
A crushing defeat on the court.
Yes, but she doesn't have time to mourn the match. She can't. That very night, she leaves her hotel.
And her family back home, did they know what was about to happen?
She had told her stepfather, Miroslav, vaguely that she might stay. His advice was chilling. He told her, if you go, don't come back.
Meaning don't try to visit, because they'll arrest you.
Exactly. Don't look back. It's a one-way door. So she goes to the Immigration and Naturalization Service office, the INS in New York City. It's late at night. She walks in and asks for political asylum.
An 18-year-old girl.
By the next morning, the news breaks. And the reaction from the Czechoslovak government was scorched earth. They stripped her of her citizenship immediately. They labeled her a traitor to the socialist state.
So in the span of 24 hours, she loses a major semifinal and loses her country.
She is 18. She has a temporary green card, a little bit of prize money, and she is effectively an orphan of the state.
That psychological weight, I just can't imagine it. Knowing you can't call home, you can't see your mother, you might never see your sister again. How did that not crush her game? How do you focus on a backhand when you've just been declared a traitor?
Well, in a strange way, she has said that it liberated her.
How so?
She later mentioned that once she defected, she had nothing left to lose on the court. The worst thing had already happened. She had lost her home.
So a break point at 4-4 in the third set.
That's nothing compared to the KGB watching your childhood home.
Right.
It gave her a perspective, a kind of mental armor that her opponent simply didn't have.
She was stateless for quite a while then, wasn't she?
From 1975 until 1981, she was a woman without a country. She played under a blank flag. She didn't become a U.S. citizen until 1981.
And she did eventually reclaim her Czech citizenship.
Much later, in 2008. But she made it very clear. That wasn't an apology to the regime. It was just reclaiming her Czech heritage. But for that prime chunk of her early career, she was adrift.
So she's in America, she's free, and she starts to win. But winning is... It's just a massive understatement for what happened in the early 80s. I was looking at the data for the 1983 season specifically, and I had to double-check the math because it looks fake.
It's the gold standard season. It's the season that everyone else's season is measured against.
She went 86-1.
86 wins, 1 loss.
Just one.
That one loss was to Kathleen Horvath in the 4th round of the French Open, a match she was expected to win easily. Other than that one afternoon in Paris, she was perfect.
That is a 98.9% winning percentage. That feels like a video game stat where you're playing on easy mode.
And yet, she was playing against some of the greatest players in history. Chris Evert was still at her peak. You had Hana Medlikova, Pam Shriver. These were not easy opponents.
During that period, she strung together 74 consecutive match wins.
A record that still stands today. It's one of those records, like DiMaggio's hitting streak, that just feels untouchable.
Okay, so let's unpack this. How does an athlete make that jump? Because she was great in the late 70s. She won Wimbledon in 78 and 79, but she wasn't invincible. She would lose. What changed in the early 80s to turn her into this machine?
She professionalized the sport. That is the only way to put it.
What do you mean by that?
Before Martina, women's tennis was largely seen as a game of finesse, grace, and baseline rallies. It was still very socially polite. Martina decided to treat herself like a high-performance engine. She looked at every single input food, training equipment, and optimized it.
This is where Nancy Lieberman comes in, right? The basketball player.
Lady Magic. Nancy Lieberman was a basketball legend, a total trailblazer in her own right, and she met Martina around 1981. At the time, Martina had just suffered a humiliating defeat to Chris Evert, a double bagel, 6-0, 6-0. She was distraught. Lieberman looked at her and gave her some tough love. She basically said, "You're talented, but you're not fit. You're not an athlete in the way you could be."
That must have been a hard pill to swallow for a two-time Wimbledon champion.
It was the truth she needed to hear. They formed Team Navratilova, and Lieberman introduced cross-training.
This was revolutionary in tennis at the time.
Completely. Players just played tennis. That was their training. Maybe they went for a jog. Lieberman had Martina doing basketball drills for footwork and agility. She had her in the gym lifting heavy weights.
And we have to pause on the weights thing because today, every female athlete lifts. You see Iga Swiatek or Aryna Sabalenka in the gym all the time. But in 1982...
it was taboo. There was a genuine, pervasive stigma that if women lifted weights, they would get bulky, look like men, and lose their flexibility.
and lose their femininity.
That was the big one. They'd lose their femininity, which was a huge commodity for sponsors.
Martina didn't care.
She did not care. She realized the physics of it. If she was stronger than you, she could hit the ball harder and get to the ball faster. It was a simple equation.
She also overhauled her diet, which wasn't really a thing back then either, was it?
No, players were famous for eating whatever. She started working with a nutritionist named Robert Haas. They actually published a best-selling book called Eat to Win.
I remember that book.
It looks a bit dated now. It was very high in complex carbs, low in fat, which was the 80s wisdom. But at the time, it was cutting edge. While other players were eating steak and eggs or whatever was at the clubhouse buffet, Martina was weighing her pasta and analyzing her blood work.
The ultimate professional.
She was treating her body like a Formula One car. And then you have the technology.
The tools of the trade, the racket.
The racket. She switched from a classic wooden racket to the Yonex R22. This was an isometric, mid-size graphite fiberglass composite racket.
So break that down for us. What does that mean in practical terms?
Well, she started with wood. Wood is heavy, it has a tiny sweet spot, and it absorbs very little vibration. It's unforgiving.
So if you don't hit it perfectly, the ball goes nowhere.
Exactly. The Yonex was stiffer, lighter, and had a much larger head, a bigger sweet spot.
Yeah.
It allowed her to generate massive power and spin without sacrificing control. When you combine that new technology with her new gym-built strength,
You get a weapon.
you get a weapon that the other women just hadn't seen before. The ball was coming off her racket at a velocity they couldn't handle.
And her style of play, the serve and volley. For listeners who maybe only watch modern tennis, which is so baseline heavy with these long grinding rallies, explain what Martina was actually doing on the court.
It's aggressive. It's suffocating. It's all about taking time away from your opponent. Most players today wait for the ball to bounce. They set up behind the baseline.
Right.
Martina wanted to hit the ball in the air, the volley. She would serve and immediately sprint to the net. She wanted to cut off the angles. This puts immense pressure on the returner. They have a split second to hit a perfect passing shot.
If they hit anything less than perfect.
She puts it away. Point over. It's a high-risk style, though. If you get past, you look foolish.
But her athleticism made it high percentage.
It did. She was so fast, closing that gap between the baseline and the net. And visually, it was incredibly intimidating. You look up from your return, and there she is right on top of you. And by 1985, she's wearing those iconic wire-rimmed glasses.
The glasses, they became such a trademark. They made her look like a strict librarian who was about to absolutely demolish you in gym class.
A very dangerous librarian. Her vision was deteriorating, so she needed them, but they became part of the armor. That whole look, the glasses, the muscles, the aggressive net play, it terrified opponents before they even stepped on the court.
But there was one opponent who didn't scare easily.
No, she did not.
We cannot tell the story of Navratilova without the other half of the coin, Chris Evert.
Fire and ice.
Yeah.
It is arguably the greatest rivalry in the history of sports, not just tennis.
The stats on this rivalry are they're voluminous. They played each other 80 times.
80 times professionally. Think about that for a second. Most major rivalries in sports, Ali versus Frazier, Brady versus Manning, they meet maybe a dozen times, if that.
It's a whole career played against one person.
These two played 80 times over the course of 15 years. It's like being married to your arch nemesis.
And the head-to-head was surprisingly close, especially given how dominant Martina became in the 80s.
Navratilova finished with a 43-77 edge. But the narrative arc is what makes it so special. In the 70s, Evert owned her. Evert was the Ice Maiden.
America's sweetheart.
Exactly. Consistent, mentally tough, the baseline queen, and beloved by the American public. Martina was the emotional, slightly out-of-shape defector who would crumble under pressure. Evert used to beat her just by waiting for Martina to miss.
But then came the fitness revolution.
And everything changed. Once Martina got fit, the dynamic flipped completely. She became the predator. Evert had to evolve or retire. And to her credit, Evert got fitter too. She started training harder just to keep up with Martina.
And they made each other better.
In every conceivable way. Is there a specific match that encapsulates the peak of this rivalry for you?
There are so many. But the 1985 French Open final has to be the one. You have to understand the surface dynamics first.
Right, clay.
Clay is slow, it chews up the ball, it blunts the speed of the serve, it gives the baseliner time. Clay is Chris Evert's sanctuary. She grew up on it.
For Navratilova, the serve-and-volley, it's hostile territory. To win on clay against Evert, she has to be absolutely perfect.
And the match was just a war.
It is often cited as the greatest women's match ever played. The wind was swirling in Paris. Navratilova was down a set. Then she was down 3-6, 2-4 in the third set. She looked dead and buried.
And she clawed back.
She just refused to lose. She clawed back. She leveled it at 5-5. The shot making was incredible. Evert hitting these impossible passing shots down the line. Martina diving for volleys in the red dirt.
Evert did eventually win it, right?
She did. She won at 6-3, 6-7, 7-5.
Yeah.
But the quality, it was a testament to both of them. It showed that Martina had forced Chrissy to become a better athlete, just as Chrissy had forced Martina to become mentally tougher.
And the wildest part of it all? They were friends. They would play these absolute blood feud matches and then go have dinner.
They played doubles together. They won the 1975 French Open and the 1976 Wimbledon doubles titles as a team.
That's unthinkable today.
Can you imagine Federer and Nadal playing doubles together in the middle of a Grand Slam they were both trying to win? Or Magic Johnson and Larry Bird? It just wouldn't happen. It speaks to a different era of camaraderie.
But time is the one opponent you can't beat. Just as Martina finally solved the Evert puzzle, a new challenger arrived from Germany.
Steffi Graf. The inevitable passage of time.
What made Graf so different?
Steffi Graf was the next evolution. She was an athlete like Martina, but she had this devastating forehand. They call her Fraulein forehand. And she could just run all day. She combined Martina's power with Evert's consistency.
There was a moment in 1987 at the U.S. Open where it felt like Martina made her last great stand against the new generation.
That was her masterpiece.
Yeah.
Graf was the new #1. She was dominating. Everyone thought the torch had been passed. But Martina, at age 30, which was considered old in tennis back then,
Ancient.
she beat Graf in the singles final in straight sets. But she didn't stop there. She won the women's doubles with Pam Shriver. And she won the mixed doubles with Emilio Sanchez.
The Triple Crown.
At a single major. She played match after match, day after day, and just swept the board. It was a statement. It was her saying, I'm not done yet.
But 1988.
1988 was the end of the era. They met again in the Wimbledon final. Martina was leading. She was up a set and a break, but Graf just physically overpowered her in the end.
What was the final score?
Graf on 5-7, 6-2, 6-1. You could see the shift happen on the court. That was the signal. The 80s were over. The 90s belonged to Stefan.
However, this brings us to the part of the Navratilova story that I find most baffling and honestly the most impressive. She stopped dominating singles, but she just kept playing and winning.
The longevity is unmatched. This is where we talk about the boxed set.
Okay, explain that term for the non-tennis nerds out there.
Sure. So a Grand Slam is winning all 4 majors. The Australian Open, the French Open, Wimbledon, and the U.S. Open in singles.
Right.
A boxed set is winning all 4 majors in all 3 disciplines. Singles, doubles, and mixed doubles. That is 12 specific trophy categories you need to conquer. It's the ultimate measure of all-around tennis greatness.
And only 3 women have ever done it.
Only 3. Margaret Court, Doris Hart, and Martina.
And Martina collected her final piece, the Australian Open mixed doubles, in 2003.
2003. She was born in 1956. So she was
46 years old.
46, winning a Grand Slam title. Most athletes are playing on the senior tour or, doing commentary in a booth by then.
And she's lifting a Grand Slam trophy on Rod Laver Arena.
And she wasn't a passenger. She wasn't just being carried by her partner. She was partnering with Leander Paes, another doubles legend. She still had the hands, the reflexes. She couldn't cover the whole court like she used to, but at the net, she was still a brick wall.
And she kept pushing the envelope. The next year, 2004, she got a wild card into Wimbledon singles.
At age 47 years and 8 months, she won her first-round match against Catalina Castano. She is the oldest player in the Open era to win a professional singles match. It's physically nonsensical.
And the final curtain call came even later than that.
The 2006 U.S. Open. She is a month shy of her 50th birthday. She partners with Bob Bryant, one of the legendary Bryant brothers, in mixed doubles. And they win the whole tournament. She lifted a U.S. Open trophy at age 50.
That brought her total count to 59 major titles.
59. 18 singles, 31 doubles, 10 mixed. It's a record endurance as much as skill. It proved that her technique was flawless. You don't play until you're 50 if your mechanics are bad. Your body just breaks down. Her mechanics were perfect.
Now, we have to pivot. Because if her life on the court was a blockbuster, her life off the court was a drama series of its own. We have to talk about her sexuality and the era in which she lived it.
Context is everything here. Today, we have pride nights at stadiums. We have openly gay athletes like Megan Rapinoe who are celebrated and have major endorsements.
Oh, right.
In 1981, being gay was a career death sentence. Corporations like Avon and Virginia Slims, who sponsored the women's tour, were terrified of the lesbian stigma.
They wanted a specific image.
They wanted the players to look like traditional wholesome girls. They wanted ponytails and ribbons and, boyfriends in the stands.
And Martina blew that up.
She did, though not entirely by choice initially. In 1981, she gave an interview to a reporter from the New York Daily News. She came out as bisexual to him. She later identified fully as lesbian. But she explicitly asked him to hold the story until she was ready.
She knew the fallout would be massive.
Of course. She wanted to control the narrative, to tell her own story.
I assume the reporter did not hold the story.
He absolutely did not. The paper published it. She was outed, effectively. But here is the iron will part. Instead of denying it or crying or hiding, she just owned it. She held a press conference and said, "Yes, that's me. What's the next question?"
Did she lose money? Endorsements?
Millions. Endorsements evaporated overnight. Madison Avenue didn't want to touch her. Here she was, the best player in the world, dominating the sport. And she had fewer sponsors than players ranked 50th who fit that traditional marketable image.
But she refused to pretend.
She refused to pretend to be straight. She sat in the player's box with her partners. She normalized it by simply existing, by being visible, long before it was safe or profitable to do so.
She had some very high-profile relationships during that time, specifically with Judy Nelson.
That was a defining saga of the 80s. They were together for 7 years. When they broke up, it turned into a messy, televised palimony suit. You have to remember, gay marriage didn't exist. There were no legal protections. So it became this huge public spectacle, tabloid fodder, for years.
But eventually she found her happy ending on that front.
She did. In 2014, at the U.S. Open, she proposed to her longtime girlfriend, Julia Limagova, on the big screen in Arthur Ashe Stadium.
That's a powerful moment.
It was a beautiful full-circle moment, from being an outcast in 1981, outed by a newspaper, to proposing on the Jumbotron in 2014 to the applause of thousands of people. It shows how much the world changed, in part because of her bravery.
But her body, which was her greatest tool, has also betrayed her in other ways. Her health history is terrifying.
It's been a gauntlet. In 2010, she was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, because of course she was, and she got high-altitude pulmonary edema, a serious lung condition.
And that led to another discovery.
While treating that, a routine mammogram caught a non-invasive form of breast cancer. She beat it with radiation.
But then 2023 happened.
The double whammy, as she called it. She found a lump in her neck. It turned out to be stage 1 throat cancer. And while they were running tests for that, they found a completely unrelated breast cancer. 2 different cancers at the same time.
That just feels incredibly cruel, especially for someone who has dedicated their entire life to fitness and health.
It does. But her reaction was classic Martina. She put out a statement that said, "This is serious. Will it be hard? Yes. But I'm going to fight with all I have got."
And she did.
She underwent aggressive radiation and chemotherapy simultaneously. She lost her sense of taste. She lost nearly 20 pounds, but she attacked it like it was a tennis match. As of March 2023, she announced she was cancer-free.
Unbelievable resilience. Now we need to move to the final and perhaps most complex part of her legacy, her activism and her public stances.
Martina has never had an unexpressed thought. If she thinks it, she says it. And that is a double-edged sword. It's gotten her both praise and a lot of heat.
And we need to look at this impartially because her politics don't fit into a neat American box of left or right. It confuses people.
Correct. On one hand, she is a registered Democrat. She's a major donor to liberal causes. She's a gay rights icon. She's an animal rights activist. But she is also a defector from communism.
So she has this very specific, very personal sensitivity to government overreach and groupthink.
Exactly. She has always been fiercely anti-communist. But she applies that same skepticism to the American right as well. In 2002, she went on Connie Chung Tonight. This was post 9/11, remember? The patriotic fervor was incredibly high.
Right, you couldn't really question the government.
Martina did. She compared the suppression of dissent in the U.S. under the Bush administration to the communist regime she grew up in. She basically said, I'm seeing signs here of what I ran away from.
Oh, I bet that went over like a lead balloon.
It was nuclear. The backlash was immediate and intense. People were burning her memorabilia. They told her to go back to Czechoslovakia. But she stood her ground. She argued that the most American thing you can do is criticize your government. She refused to apologize.
But in the last few years, the main controversy has shifted. She has become one of the most prominent voices in the debate regarding transgender women in sports.
This is where her legacy is currently being fiercely debated. And again, reporting on the sources, Martina has taken a hardline stance that transgender women biological males, in her terminology, should not compete in the female category.
And she hasn't minced words.
No. She has used terms like failed male athletes to describe trans women in sports. She called it cheating at one point, although she did later apologize for that specific word choice, saying she shouldn't have implied intent to cheat. She pivoted to calling for a science-based conversation about biological advantage.
This put her directly at odds with the very LGBTQ community she helped build.
It did, dramatically. Athlete Ally, a major LGBTQ athlete advocacy group, removed her from their advisory board. They labeled her comments transphobic and harmful. She's been heavily criticized by trans activists and allies who argue that her exclusionist stance hurts vulnerable people and gatekeeps womanhood.
But she hasn't backed down.
Not an inch. She supported the boycott against Nike regarding their sponsorship of Dylan Mulvaney. She was very critical of the IOC regarding the boxer Emaine Khelif. She has helped found the Women's Sports Policy Working Group to lobby for the protection of the female category based on biological sex.
It's a nuanced position she's trying to hold, isn't it? She claims she wants inclusion, but not at the expense of what she sees as fairness.
Right. And she has said repeatedly in interviews something to the effect of, I am happy to address a transgender woman in whatever form she prefers, but I would not be happy to compete against her on the tennis court. She views it as a direct conflict between the rights of trans individuals to identify and the rights of biological women to fair competition.
Regardless of where you stand on that issue, it fits the pattern of her life. She identifies a position she believes is true, and she holds it, regardless of the consequences or who gets angry.
Whether it's refusing to speak Russian in Prague in the 60s, refusing to hide her girlfriend in 1981, or refusing to accept trans women in sports in 2024, she is constitutionally incapable of saying something she doesn't believe, for better or worse.
So when we step back and look at the sum total of Martina Navratilova, the 167 titles, the defection, the revolution in training, the activism, what do we see? What is the legacy?
We see the definition of a game changer. She didn't just play the sport. She dragged it, kicking and screaming, into the modern era. She showed women it was okay to be sweaty, muscular, and aggressive. She showed athletes they could have a political voice. She's the bridge between the old world of tennis and the power game we see today.
She holds the records that will likely never, ever be broken.
And she lived a life that was honest, even when honesty was dangerous, expensive, and deeply unpopular.
I want to leave you with one final story, a little nugget from the archives that I think adds a strange, almost prophetic layer to her current battles about biology and sports.
Go on.
In 1992, there was another Battle of the Sexes match. Martina was 35 years old. She played Jimmy Connors, who was 40, in a big exhibition in Las Vegas.
I remember this. It was a huge pay-per-view event.
Right, but it wasn't a standard match. The organizers knew that a male pro, even an older one, had a significant biological advantage in power and speed, so they rigged the rules to try and level the playing field.
How so?
Connors was only allowed one serve per point. No second serves.
That is a massive handicap. It takes away all the free points and puts immense pressure on that first serve.
And for Martina, She was allowed to hit the ball into the doubles alleys.
Wait, so the court was effectively 4.5 feet wider for her than it was for him.
Exactly. She had a significantly larger target area to hit into. Connors had to defend a doubles court while only being able to play on a singles court.
Those are huge, huge advantages for Martina.
And yet, she lost. Connors won 7-5, 6-2. He just had too much power, too much reach, even at 40, even with all the rules stacked against him.
That's a fascinating footnote to her career.
It is. But when you look at her current ideological crusade regarding biological advantages in sports, you have to wonder if that night in Vegas, facing Jimmy Connors across the net, is playing somewhere in the back of her mind. She experienced that biological gap firsthand, even with the rules rigged heavily in her favor.
That is a very provocative thought. It certainly adds weight to her perspective, whether you agree with it or not. It wasn't theoretical for her, it was practical.
Indeed. From the concrete walls of Prague to the royal box at Wimbledon, it's been one hell of a journey. That's it for this deep dive into the iron will of Martina Navratilova.
Keep checking the data.
And we'll see you next time.